Hello and good morning to all my students out there. No matter what yesterday was like, birds always start the new day with a song. So remember always to start a new day with a song of praise. So today I have brought in the little Dory for you to say hi and to greet you. Oh, look at those beautiful eyes, aren't they lovely? Okay, let's get moving. In today's video, I will be teaching the prose lesson from Unit 1, The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. Okay, let me introduce the author to you. Khushwant Singh is an Indian novelist and a lawyer. He studied at St. Stephen's College, Delhi and King's College, London. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1947. As a writer, he is best known for his keen secularism, sarcasm, and love for poetry. He served as the editor of several literary newspapers and news magazines. Khushwant Singh was awarded with Padma Bhushan in 1974, Padma Vibhushan by the Government of India, and Sahitya Academy Fellowship by Sahitya Academy of India. The Mark of Vishnu, A History of Sikhs, The Train to Pakistan, Success Mantra, We Indians and Death at My Doorstep are some of his brilliant work. Okay, in this prose lesson, we see that the author has very beautifully penned down his relationship with his grandmother, a bonding between the author and the grandmother. I'm very sure that most of you will agree with me that you do have a very special bonding with your grandparents. I think there is a magical bond between grandparents and grandchildren. They're always there to support us and no matter what happens, we know that our grandparents will always stand by our side, right, children? So this is a very beautiful way of expressing his relationship with his grandmother. So the lesson begins with about how he says that he always had a memory of his grandmother being very old. So he gives a vivid description about his grandfather and his grandmother. So he says, when he is describing about the grandfather, he says that he was wearing, the grandfather is on a portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. So that's where he had seen, he's not seen his grandfather alive, so he's seen him only on a portrait which was hanging above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. And he was found wearing turbans, loose fitting clothes, long white beard, and looked 100 years old, which means he already looked very old, that he cannot look even more older. And then he comes to explain about his grandmother, that his grandmother was already an old woman, and he says that I've seen her all these years as only a old person. Obviously an old person, what the if we have to imagine an old person, we imagine them with gray hair and a wrinkled face, slightly bent, and you know, that's how we find that they are old, right? So she's old and wrinkled, and then he says that she's been old for 20 years, which means she's quite an old person. And not only that, he describes that she looked short and fat and slightly bent. Usually that's how a grandmother or a grandfather, when they are very old, what happens is they take the support of their hand, they support on their hip to walk. She is also slightly bent, and she's got a lot of wrinkles, and those wrinkles appear as crisscross all over her face, and it runs all over her face. But you know what, he knew that, she once was young and pretty, and she had a husband and children. But it is very, very difficult for the author to even understand that once she was young and pretty and had a husband. So sometimes even when your parents are talking about their childhood, in a in a just a moment, what happens is, like, you can't even understand, or no, we can't even relate that one's our parents or grandparents were young, and they were as mischievous as you are. And it's very difficult, no, for a second. That's when the reality strikes. Okay, they used to be young, just that we have not seen them young. But when we see, they look at the pictures, then we understand that, okay, they were young too. So, according to the author, the idea itself is very revolting to him, that to understand that once this grandmother of his used to be very small, young, and he says that it will look absurd and undignified on our part, because when they tell that, she was young, he says that he's mentioned that it will look very undignified. And that's how she walks. And she's very old, and she hobbled around the house, in the sense she cannot walk steadily, her footsteps were not steady. And she was always seen in spotless white dress, with hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop, because she has to bend down to walk. She has to balance her hand, and she always had beads in her hand, that is beads to say prayers. She always uttering prayers. And her she had silver lock of hair, is, and untidily over her pale, because why it's because, only when we are young we are pink in health. So once we get old, we become pale. It says puckered face, which means, it is to contract the face into wrinkled face. And her lips constantly kept moving with inaudible prayers. So it is inaudible, I have mentioned audible, I'm sorry, and inaudible prayers. So she frequently reciting prayers. Okay, how did no, this is how he explains that, when he saw his grandmother in pure spotless white dress, yeah, he compares her to the beautiful excuse me, sorry, he compares her to beautiful winter landscape in the mountains. The scene itself it looks very serene, right? So that's how he compares her grandmother to a winter landscape in the mountains. And she was like this landscape, and because of the expansive pure white, whenever she was walking around, there was serenity and peace around her, and she was beautiful. Okay, let's look deeply into the author's relationship with his grandmother. Now, first we need to understand how did he land up in his grandmother's place. So his parents, who have now live in the city, wanted to get settled. So before they could get good job and settle down, they had left the author with his grandmother, under grandmother's supervision. So he been growing in his grandmother's house in a village. And both of them were very good friends. Okay, the author and his grandmother were very good friends. She would get him ready for school, like giving him a bath, getting him dressed, and getting his those days the wooden slate, which has to be plastered with yellow chalk, and a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen, a pen which was, red in color, which he will fill it with the blue ink. And she will get everything ready, fetch everything on place, and she would prepare the breakfast and everything. This always reminds us of our grandmother, right? Oh, whenever we get ready to school, she would be, I think, more than your mother. I think our grandmother is a person who will make sure that everything is kept in place and your favorite lunch is being packed in your lunch box. So she also prepares um, chapati layered with butter and sugar spread over it. And she monotonously says her morning prayer, which in a sing-song way. And the author always adores to listen to her voice and her prayers. So she makes all the breakfast and other things. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Look at the breakfast. She usually prepares a thick stale chapati with bread and sugar to spread on it, and the grandmother always accompanied him to his school because this school was attached to a temple. So after leaving him at the school, she will sit in the temple to say her morning prayer, because usually in those days only priest taught them the alphabets and the morning prayer. A school, a temple which was run by a school which was run by a temple, where all the children sit in the veranda where they sing the alphabets and the prayers in a chorus. So she also carries some chapatis along with her, for the village dogs. These dogs always come around because she gave them the chapatis, so they follow them. This shows her benevolent and kind character, where she also took care of the animals. And then after until he finishes his school work, learning the alphabets and scriptures, they both go back home together, and she meets him at the temple door, and they go home together, and on the way even the dogs follow them. So that's a priest, children. Okay. So when his parents were comfortably settled after a while, that is when he's grown into a boy, when he has to go to high school, that's when the parents are settled in the city, and now they call for the author to come along with his grandmother to the city. So this is young Kushwant Singh, and that's not his mother. That's only an image of an old grandmother. So now the parents are comfortably settled, and now they send for Kushwant Singh, and this is a turning point in their friendship. So long he was totally dependent on his grandmother. Now he's going to his house, to his parents, and now here what happens is they both share the same room. Okay, it is not like his grandmother's house. It's like they both now have to stay in the same house, same room. But there is a change. The change is no longer grandmother can accompany him to school. Now he's going to an English school in a motor bus, and she cannot feed the stray dogs, or instead she took on to feed the sparrows in the courtyard of the city house. Again, I'm trying to emphasize the character of the grandmother, where she's not able to feed the dogs. Now she is trying to feed the sparrows, and now she has nothing to do with his school, because he's going to an English medium school. Though they are very good friends, but still the connection between them is slightly fading off. So let's see what happens in the next phase of his life, where he continues with his higher education. What happens with his relationship with his grandmother in the next video. Until then, all of you, stay inside, stay blessed. God bless you.